Well, hey, I want to start out again by thanking Mike Whiting and Tom Hannafy and Joe Hurt for setting this up today. I had an opportunity to speak at the, I believe it's your annual conference down in Jeffersonville. It was an absolute honor for me. And so I'm just honored to be here and spend a few minutes and share a few words with you guys today. So, I know that everybody's got busy schedules. I know that everybody's got families they want to get home to and work they need to get back to. So the fact that you're making some time today, even if you were told you had to, I appreciate that fact. So thanks again for being here. I want to start out by just sharing a story with you about my first experience with the fire service. And that experience was on February 12th, 1991. I was 9 years old. I was getting ready to celebrate my 10th birthday the following day. Now, Tom kind of alluded to how I grew up a little bit. I grew up in a very broken home. Home plagued with child abuse, drug abuse, domestic violence. A home well below the poverty line. I can remember growing up, we would heat a room with a kerosene heater, but we couldn't always afford kerosene. But when we did, that's the room that we slept in, and we would hang blankets on the doorways. And then we would sleep on the floor around the kerosene heater. Nights that we couldn't afford the fuel, we would actually sleep in the kitchen. And because you're in the fire service, you know why we slept in the kitchen. That's where the oven was. And so we slept on the floor in front of the oven and again, draped blankets over the doorways. Well, this particular evening, February 12th, 1991, I was getting ready to lay down and go to bed and wake up as any, hopefully, new 10-year-old would the following day. And my stepfather comes home from a drunken night of partying. I don't know what his blood alcohol level was, but it was well beyond the legal limit. He proceeded to fill a kerosene heater with what we thought was kerosene, and in the middle of the night we realized it was diesel fuel. Kerosene heater exploded, ultimately, caught fire, basically lost all the little stuff that we had was gone. And so that morning, when we came to that and I woke up, I came face to face with the first person that I'd ever encountered in the fire service. This was somebody who clothed me, who gave me food. They weren't there to fight a fire. And ultimately, they provided something for me that day that very few people in my life at that point had provided me. And it was a piece of love, frankly. And so I want you to consider that as we go through this talk. I want you to think about, you're in the fire service, but you do so much more. So with that, I want to share a passage with you. And this passage is near and dear to my heart. It's going to be familiar to a lot of you, if not all of you. And at first, you're going to kind of be questioning how this plays into you in the fire service. And we'll go through that. But I want you just to listen to the words. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. The preamble, right? Penned back in 1789 by our framers. Speaks to the core of what you do every single day. I'm going to repeat just certain phrases here a couple more times, and I want you to hang on to a couple things. In order to form a more perfect union. See, the framers were romantics. They already believed we had a perfect union. They were encouraged by forming a more perfect union. Promoting and ensuring domestic tranquility. Promoting the general welfare. And to secure the blessings of liberty. Folks, let me tell you, those things aren't possible without doing what you do day in and day out. And I want you to think about that. Now, as a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, which has been mentioned previously, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And I believe that all of you have taken some oath in some form or fashion that has the same basic framework of the oath that I took. Don't ever let go of that oath. And if you don't know it, I encourage you to go back and read it. Because that's your why. That is why you do what you do. And don't ever lose sight of that. You have voluntarily chose a profession that directly puts you in harm's way. It puts the men and women that serve underneath you in harm's way. At any given time, you could be called to leave your family and make the ultimate sacrifice. At any given time, you or one of your men or women could be called to give their life for another Hoosier, whom of which they've probably never met. whom of which they may be at separate ends of the spectrum politically, who they may disagree with on everything should they have had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation. But because you donned the uniform and took that oath, you're willing to do that. Don't ever lose sight of that. Don't ever discount the monotony of coming into the firehouse every single day, because it's easy to do. I can tell you, when you get into your op tempo and men and women are coming and going and you're doing your thing day in and day out, it is easy to become complacent. When I was in Iraq in 2005, there was a big brick wall. It was the last thing we saw as we head out on a mission. Big black letters, it was spray painted. Complacency kills. It couldn't be more true in your line of work. Whatever it takes, do not allow yourself or anybody on your team to become complacent. It's the enemy. Every day you show up to work, you ensure domestic tranquility. Every day you put a uniform on, you ensure a more perfect union. You promote the general welfare. Not just for Hoosiers, but for America. For the greatest nation in the world. You're upholding the cornerstone document, arguably the most important document in the world, every single day. That's your calling. That's why you're here. You know, as mentioned, this past session was my first session in the General Assembly. And, you know, we passed a couple of bills. We worked with Tom and Mike on a lot of things. And I'm not going to get in the weeds on a big policy discussion today, but I will put a few on your radar that we talked about. And you know, like I said, we can talk about these afterwards. You can get with Mike and Tom and kind of go through those. But I do just want to throw a few things out. Senate Bill 85 is a 1977 fund for retirement and survivor spouse benefits. Basically, it increased the basic monthly pension benefit to members of the 77 fund. Got my notes messed up. Senate Bill 216, educational cost exemptions. Basically now it includes children and spouses. These are big deals. These are life-changing events for you and your families and for all your team members. House Bill 1258, residency requirements, expands the residency requirements up to 50 miles even in non-contiguous counties. So again, those are some things that we're proud of that we passed this year that affect all of you in this room directly. So I can recall the Indiana Law Enforcement and Firefighters Memorial. I can recall the very first time I stepped in front of it. I can recall where I was, what time it was, what was going on in my life. It was the second week of January, my first session, earlier this year. And I'll be honest with you, as I stood there, I became overwhelmed. Because I thought about the magnitude of the names that were on this memorial. It's 296. You say, well, that's, over the course of history, that's not a lot. That's 296 incomplete families. 296 men and women, mothers, fathers, husbands, daughters, who are never coming home. Some of you may know some of them on that list. It's 200 Hoosiers who laid down their life because they believed in their calling. There's very few things more important than honoring the men and women that came before us, especially those that were called to make the ultimate sacrifice and answered that call so bravely. I mentioned complacency to you earlier. Complacency is something that you're going to deal with every single day. And I want to challenge you today. When you train, you need to go a little harder. Because there's 296 legacies that are calling on you and depending upon you to do that. Be a little smarter. Spend more time reading. Maybe it's a new piece of gear. Maybe it's physical fitness. There's 296 legacies that are asking you, pleading with you to go a little further, push a little harder, expect a little more. Not just out of yourself, but out of the men and women that serve with you and underneath you. Lead from the front. Lead by example, not with words. Never forget, every day you come in, there's 296 names on that memorial that gave everything and that are asking you to give a little more. That's an awesome responsibility, but it's one that we've got to fight against complacency every single day. Some of you may be sitting here thinking, motivation will carry me through. See Matthew Grindstaff in here. I had the opportunity to serve with Matt in Iraq in 2003. He was in my reserve unit. And I hope he would back up that I was probably one of the more motivated Marines in the unit. Well, let me tell you something. Motivation's short-lived. Motivation, simply put, is purely emotional. And everybody knows in this room that emotions are up and down and they're highs and lows. Motivation is not long-term. The only cure for this is discipline. You say, well, where does discipline come from? That's easy. Discipline comes from within. Discipline is a large word. It encompasses a lot of things, and there's different types of it. But the type of discipline I'm referring to today, the type of discipline that warriors like you in this room are called to execute, is self-discipline. It starts with you and it ends with you. See, the decision to be more disciplined is simply that. It's a decision. It's not a want. It's a commitment. But it's a commitment that only you can make. And when you decide to be better, you're making that decision to be self-disciplined. When you decide to serve something bigger than yourself and commit to that process, you're choosing to be a little more self-disciplined. If you're sitting here today, maybe you're not in the best shape. Maybe you don't know as much about your gear, your training, your tactics, or your procedures. Or maybe you do. There's just room for improvement. The only reason you're not as self-disciplined as I'm challenging you to be is because you haven't made that decision yet. And that's the beauty. Every day we wake up, we get a new opportunity to tackle the world, to hit it head on. But again, you're charged with an awesome responsibility. Self-discipline it's the root of all good things. It's the root of everything that's good, not just in the fire service, but in the world. Self-discipline is the one thing that you have direct and immediate control over today to not only change your life, but to affect and change positively others around you. And I want you to think about that. It's not easy. There's going to be days you want to do it, and there's going to be days you don't. But keep in mind, we're not talking about motivation. We're talking about self-discipline. As I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to work with Mike and Tom on a lot of things this year. And, over the last 2 years, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed getting to work with them and getting to know them. I'd be off today if I didn't leave you here with the understanding that you guys are extremely well served and represented in the Indiana General Assembly. I will tell you that I have met all types of lobbyists, tall ones, short ones, good ones, bad ones, greasy ones, and not so greasy ones. All right? I will tell you that Mike and Tom are some of the most respected members that walk those halls. They care about you. They love you. They care about your families. They want what's best for you, even when you don't know that. They're working for you. I don't know how many times we've texted and talked, and we've talked about legislation. And one of the things that I've talked to them about is we met last month. I said, let's look a year down the road. Let's look 5 years down the road. Where's the fire service going? Instead of talking about bills for next session, let's work on some big stuff. Let's think about the longevity of the fire service and what you guys are going to need. Seems like so many things are reactive in politics and reactive in the General Assembly. That's not where I come from. That's not who I am. It's not what I know. And so I refuse to conform to that. One thing I will tell you is I want you to leave in here today knowing that you guys are extremely well represented. At this time, I just want to give them a round of applause, if you would, please. Thank you. In closing, I want to leave you with this. There were 1.2 million firefighters in 2018 in the United States. There were 1.3 million fires. Think about that. There's more than one fire for each of you in this room. Over 3,400 civilian casualties. Over 64 firefighters made the ultimate sacrifice in 2018. A call goes out for fire service every 23 seconds in the United States. The only way to directly lower those numbers is to be more self-disciplined. It starts with you and it ends with you. So with that, I just want to thank each and every one of you for having me here today. It's an honor to share some time with you and share a few words. I'll stick around. I'm happy to answer any questions. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely appreciate the call that each one of you have answered to the fire service. And I want you to know that you've got a friend in the Indiana General Assembly and me. So God bless you guys and your families. God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.